Since the Persians had never produced a class of architects, this is rather interesting, their kings called upon the subject peoples. Consequently, their palaces were built in a mixed style. So the Persian style is rather eclectic for that reason. Not a lot of central identity to the Persian style. It's pretty much influenced by everything from India on the one end to Greece on the other. And when you go there and look at their stuff, you'll see Indian looking sort of things. I didn't go there and look at it. I've seen many pictures of the staircase at Persepolis and so on. And you see influences from India to Egypt to Greece. How is this so? It's like a large multicultural empire. Multiculturalism is not new. It's one of the oldest philosophies in the book. It goes way back to these ancient empires that tried to encompass everybody. Anyways, let us continue. We skip just a little ways there. An inscription of Darius at Susa tells how, in building his palace, he used cedar from Mount Lebanon, teakwood from India, stone from Elam, gold from Lydia and Bactria, and turquoise from Charosmia. It also tells how he used Greek and Lydian masons, Babylonian brickmakers, and Median and Egyptian goldsmiths. A relief of Darius giving audience with Crown Prince Xerxes standing behind him offers an unexpected dividend in technical knowledge. The throne whereon Darius sits is supposed to be of solid gold, but the obvious turnings of the legs and the rungs of his chair show two things supposed to be solid gold. First, that the lathe had been invented, for one thing, and second, the throne was really of wood with a plating of gold. Much, much more likely. Nobody ever turned a solid gold chair leg on a lathe. Okay, we skip a couple of paragraphs. Phoenician shipwrights advanced the art of shipbuilding. Phoenicia's right there where Syria is today. Egyptian ships of the early dynasties were hardly more than large canoes. When the peoples of the eastern Mediterranean began to sail the sea, they learned that rowing, with the rowers facing aft, was more efficient than paddling. Interesting. I still, even though I read over this stuff here, I still don't really know what the difference would be. I'd have to experiment. I don't get it. Ships split into two types. The war galley, long and narrow with many oars and a small sail, and the merchantman, short and tubby, with few oars and a large sail. You just got to get it there. It doesn't matter how fast. But war is a serious business. You got to get there quickly. All ships had one single rectangular square sail. The warship needed many oars to dart about in all directions during a battle. The merchantman, on the other hand, needed the space the rowers would otherwise occupy for its cargo, and could not afford a large crew of rowers. Most ancient rowers, Ben-Hur to the contrary notwithstanding, were free workers. They're chained to their thing, and fairly well paid free workers at that. The use of slaves and prisoners as rowers did not become common until when? Roman times? Greek times. The Renaissance. Until the Renaissance. Okay. We skip a paragraph. Galleys were used for commerce only under exceptional circumstances. For example, in the 6th century BC, the Carthaginians claimed a monopoly of all trade in the western Mediterranean and fed interlopers to the fish when they caught them. At this time, certain Greek traders used 50-oared galleys to run the Carthaginian blockade. A galley with 50 oars. They could make a profit in spite of their horde of hungry rowers, because the cargo, silver mines from the Spanish mines of Spanish Tartossus, was both compact, the silver was compact, and precious. Also, such a ship had a fair chance to escape when a Carthaginian galley came crawling like a colossus centipede over the horizon in pursuit. Right? They're blockaded, and they know if the Carthaginians catch them, they're done. But the Carthaginians can't catch them. Carthage had started as a Phoenician colony, founded according to doubtful traditions in 814 BC. Doesn't mention why they're doubtful. The Phoenicians had already sailed and rowed their little cockle shell craft the length and breadth of the Mediterranean, set up several other colonies. During the century following the founding of Carthage, the Phoenicians developed a warship of a new and more formidable type than their very early type. They'd already gotten all over the Mediterranean, but they've learned enough now and they developed this new type of warship. These may have been the ships that were taken overland in pieces and sent down the Euphrates to help King Sennacherib to put down the Babylonian rebellion. The new warship had a pointed ram at the waterline and was specially braced to withstand the shock of ramming. These ships also had a solid deck over the rowers' heads to carry fighting men. Alright, they came up with a version of that again in Greece later on with a bronze beak. Not just pointed and reinforced, but reinforced with 8 feet of timber and bronze at the front. Whereas earlier warships had but one bank of oars on each side, usually making a total of 50 oars, with one rower to each oar, the new ship had the rowers arranged in pairs on each side. They were seated in some staggered arrangements, each man of the lower bank being inboard of, aft of, or below his seatmate. The exact arrangement has been the subject of endless argument in modern times, though most authorities prefer a vertical stagger, but each rower pulled his own oar. The new warship came to be known as a D-I-E-R-E, or bireme, B-I-R-E-M-E, because it packed more muscle per foot of length than warships of the old single-banked type. It could go faster. So it's just having people seated in front of you and below, so they don't have to be all the way in front of you. They can just be a little closer to you. Maybe your feet are up over their shoulders a ways or something. Not quite 2 stories of people sitting there, 1.5 stories, and then you can pack more in there. So it's just putting 2 banks, and the next step then of course is to put 3 banks of rowers, and then 4 banks of rowers, and each one has their own oar. Not multiple people on an oar, it says here. It says each one has their own oar. In about 704 BC, a Greek shipbuilder, Ammianocles of Corinth, is said to have carried this principle a step further by placing his oarsmen in groups of 3, also staggered, although nobody knows exactly how. Each man still pulled his own oar. The resulting threer or trireme, driven at speeds of up to 7 knots by 170 or more rowers, became the standard battleship of the Mediterranean and fought the great naval battles among the Greeks, the Persians, whose navy was mainly Phoenician, not Greek, and the Carthaginians. I'll pause for a second there. There were some ships that survived the great battle at Salamis with the Greeks when the Persians attacked the Greeks. And most of those ships, it says here that the Persians' navy was mainly Phoenician. Part of the Persian navy was Greek from the colonies along the shore of Turkey, modern-day Turkey. Those Greek colonies were captured, and their navies were used in the attack on Greece, and those were most of the ships that survived were of that type. Were actually able to make it through the battle, and the Persians took them back. And then later, the Battle of Mycale, M-Y-C-A-L-E, the Persians lost these islands in a rebellion of the Greeks who were there, and other Greeks rowing in to help them, and so the Greeks ended up capturing what was basically left of the Persian navy. Really, really pissed off the Persian king. Was it Xerxes or Darius? Okay, let's continue here. The Phoenicians also pioneered in large-scale manufacture. Skipping just a bit. From Egypt, where it had long been practiced, the Phoenicians borrowed the art of making glass. The Egyptians and Mesopotamians used glass mainly for glazing beads and tiles, and for making small bottles to hold cosmetics. The Phoenicians